In the last video of the series about mapping sets, I would like to demonstrate how to import and export mapping set. Last time I showed how to create mapping sets, which was down here with this button. But you might have a mapping set already in an Excel file that you want to import. To do this, go to File, Import. And then in the SnowOwl folder, there's mapping sets from Excel file, next, and then you just browse for your mapping set file. Mine is called dermatitis. Open. And then there are three different types of import. You can either clear the existing mapping sets. This overrides all the existing mapping sets in your view, and you start out from scratch. You can also use this option when importing for the first time and when your mapping sets view is empty, but you have to be careful because all the other mapping sets will be gone if you run an import this way. The second option is to merge. This means that new content is added to the existing database without removing or changing existing content. So all of the other mapping sets are capped, and you could add a new mapping set, or you could also add new members to mapping sets that already exist in the database. And the last one would be to replace. This will update existing mapping sets by adding, modifying, or removing mappings. And existing content that is not part of the import is kept and not changed. So this is updating and this is just adding. I would like to add a new mapping set to my data, so I'm choosing the merge option and finish, and we're already done with the import. You can see I just imported one mapping set called dermatitis, and this is the first version of this mapping set, and here we can see all the different components that were imported. So these are all the mappings here, and then down here there's also some metadata that was imported from this mapping set. Okay, and here is the new mapping set that we just imported, and we can see it's an ICD-10 to SNOMED CT mapping set, and if I wanted to, I could move it here in my ICD-10 to SNOMED CT folder. So when you're importing a mapping set, it's always here as a first level mapping set in the hierarchy. So much about importing. Now I would like to show you how to export. As an Excel file, you cannot export in RF1 or RF2 format. If you needed a file like this, you would have to create a map type reference set. We talked about this in the first video. So we will export an Excel file. Exporting is like taking a snapshot of the current data that is in your system. So you would export all the mapping sets that are here in this view at the current state. So you have to make sure that all your changes are saved for the export. To start an export, go to File, Export, and then we have mapping sets to Excel file, next, and I would like to export to the desktop, and let's just call it export mapping set, and run the export. So now all these mapping sets that are here, and some of them are quite big, like this one, are exported as an Excel file. And it's already done. So after the export, we are presented with a link here. So to the export file, it's here. Let's take a look at it. So we exported several mapping sets, and they're all here listed alphabetically. Each mapping set has a separate spreadsheet. And on the top of the list, maybe let's look at this one here. On the top of the list, we have what we could find in the Properties tab. So the name, definition, this is the name of the version, this is the effective time. So this one was already published, and some optional fields. And there's some information that we would find on the metadata tab of the mapping set editor. And down here, these are the mappings. And it's pretty much what you could also see in your mapping set editor. If you recall, there was the option in the table preferences to display a lot of information. By default, we just display the most important information, such as the target code system and the target code and the target CRM, and the same for the source. But there's a lot of other information that could be displayed, and when you're exporting, all this information is here in separate columns. So we would have an effective time, the status of the mapping, if it's active or inactive. This is some information that is non-mandatory, that's related to complex maps. And then here we have the source code system name. So this is SNOMED CT, the ID of the source code system. This one hasn't been versioned yet, so there were some changes made to SNOMED CT and it was not versioned. And this is the concept ID. And this is the preferred term, and this was mapped to a target code system, to a local code system. That's the ID of the local code system. The local code system hasn't been versioned, and here we can see the identifier and the term of the local code. So it's like what you'd see in your editor. If a mapping set hasn't been published, like for example diabetes, this is the one that we were just creating in the previous video. You can see this one is unversioned and it does not have an effective time. Because when you're exporting, you're not making any changes to the content, you're just exporting whatever is in the system at this particular moment. If you want to create an export file for an official release, you would need to update unpublished components first. For this, you would create a new version, which is this button up here, of your mapping sets, and then go to Next. Here you could enter a name for a version and a description. You can see there's already a version existing here of the mapping set, so I'm already creating the second version. And then you can specify an effective time here, and this is then the effective time that will be associated with the components that you're versioning at this particular moment. So with the unpublished components in your mapping sets, for example, of the diabetes set that we just created, would get this new effective time. And then you would run an export just the way we did it before, and this export can be used as a release file. It's also possible to switch between versions. For example, if you wanted to work with an older version or export an older version, then you could use this here. Main is always the latest version, but if there are older versions, like for example here, we made changes since the last versioning to mapping sets, I could click this version and then see the older version of the mapping set. But I will make a video just about versioning and talk about this in detail. I just wanted to show these features quickly. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.